नींद आए तो हाथ ऊपर उठा लेना. I took my nap. I had my lunch and I took 5 minutes rest. So as we were discussing in the morning class, everything boils down, for all engineers, it boils down to economics. Money is that drives the whole engineering systems. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
We talk about multiple D's in power systems, in energy systems. One is about decarbonization, that we are decarbonizing the industry. So why the resources, the energy sources from which we are sourcing our energy, we are trying to source energy from resources which are less polluting, less carbon emitting sources. Another facet of power systems or energy systems that is evolving is decentralization. The resources are getting decentralized. Now we are having more and more of solar, to a certain extent wind also, but specifically in case of solar, we are, rather than having large power plants, the resources are at your rooftop, at every nook and corner in the system. So the systems are getting decentralized. You don't have any control over these systems also. It is not only that they are distributed, but they are decentralized. You cannot control the generation from those sources. So they are as independent as possible. And another facet of this energy system is digitization. You are making it more and more digitized based upon better communication systems, smarter grids, what we call as smart grids. So these are three broad facets of energy systems as it evolves, and and these systems are evolving like that. Decarbonization is happening, digitization is happening, decentralization is happening. The way by which electricity was being supplied or is being supplied today may not continue in the same fashion because of the change in the underlying technology and the underlying economics. Now, when you are buying electricity from the grid, what is that you pay? What is the rate that you pay? 2 to 3 rupees per unit. Is that what you pay as a consumer?
Slightly
6 to 7.
6 to 7.
Gujarat it is 6 to 7 rupees, but in Daman it is, because of duty, it is cheaper, 2 to 3.
2 to 3 rupees. In Gujarat, it is 6 to 7 rupees for residential
6
consumers.
rupees 30 paisa.
And in Mumbai,
6 to 7.
6. In Delhi, it is costlier. The tariff that we pay as customers in Rajasthan, it is a bit costly. We pay somewhere around 8 rupees per unit for residential consumers. That is the starting point, 8 to 9 rupees per unit. And for commercial consumers, it can go up to 12 rupees per unit. It is costlier. And that is same for a large number of northern states. Electricity is not cheap. What is the cost of electricity generation from coal power plants? 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 2 to 3 rupees per unit. How about solar? Nowadays it is
Maybe.
2 to 3 rupees.
Same.
Same. So the cost of electricity generation from solar is 2 to 3 rupees. From that, coal also is similar, 2 to 3 rupees per unit. But when you are buying it from the grid, you are paying 6 rupees per unit. But when you are putting it at a rooftop, the cost is only 3 rupees per unit. So what would you do? You put up a solar rooftop. This is, obviously it makes sense, with or without subsidies, it makes sense to put up a solar panel on your rooftop and secure electricity supply from that rooftop. It makes sense. Economically, it makes sense. Engineering obviously follows the grid interconnection, the interconnection of the solar panel to the grid, the all mechanisms, they are in line. The regulator says yes, you put up solar rooftop to a certain extent, they don't mind. So it works. How is it likely to change the way by which we buy electricity? That is what I'll be focusing upon. This is a new facet. Some of you may feel it is fancy, but at times fancy ideas catch traction and they become very much viable. We'll see how it works. We'll try to understand how traditionally electricity is being supplied, what changes are happening, what local markets are, what is the role of possibly game theory in that. If we get time, we'll try to focus upon that. For those who do not come from electrical background, just to touch upon the basics, electricity is produced by large power plants in large capacities in megawatts at low voltages, stepped up using transformers, transmitted over the transmission networks, over the long lines from the generation to the distribution sites. On the distribution side, using multiple substations, we step it down and use it at lower voltages. Traditionally, let's say in Daman, who is the supplier?
Torrent power.
Torrent Power. Prior to that,
So it was government.
Government.
Then it was further cheaper. It was 1 rupees 1 day.
government was quite cheaper. In the case of government, it was the government electricity department which was providing you the connection. So you simply would go get a connection from the department. That was a government department. It had its own generation, own transmission and own distribution.
Only distribution.
Only distribution. Generation, they were buying it from others. Say, let's say we go to Maharashtra or we go to Gujarat or we go to Rajasthan. There the state electricity boards, they had their own generation plants, own transmission systems and own distribution systems. We used to call them the state electricity boards. And the state electricity board was responsible for producing, transmitting and distributing electricity and getting revenue from the customer. So there was a single entity doing all the 4 businesses of the supply business. How many of you are interested in business? I've been told that Gujaratis are quite interested in business. Is that so? So let us talk business today. How does this thing change? Earlier, the same guy, the same electricity board was doing all the 4 portions of 4 steps of the business, which was generating, transmitting, distributing and the metering part. The meter reader would come to your household, do the reading part and generate a bill and collect revenue from you. There are 4 steps, 4 parts of this supply business. Electricity is the big business. That's why Torrent is there, that's why Tatas are there, that's why other entities are there. They mean business and they are there to make money. They are profit-oriented companies. This was how traditionally electricity supply system evolved from 1880s to 1980s. For almost 100 years, this was how it all worked. However, because of inefficiencies, because of the losses in the electricity boards, because of lack of good efficiency in the system. These systems in 1980s onwards, from South American countries to UK, European countries, Western European countries to US, this thought started coming up. I think he'll miss out on making money. I'll tell you the trick to make a lot of money today. These countries, they started realizing that the traditional way of doing this business, though there is a whole lot of story behind it, but I'll try to make it short, that this traditional way of doing this business is not making sense. There are significant losses happening on the distribution side. Customers are not paying their bill, and eventually everybody, the whole of the supply chain is making a loss. The losses are, even today, if we talk about the Indian distribution systems, Indian utilities, the losses are running into, what is the size of those losses? I'll encourage you to use your phones and search for the quantum of losses of Indian distribution, power distribution companies. Just guess what is the number. Losses of Indian power distribution companies or utilities. It is not in crores. Kitna? Yes, it is not in crores. It is not in 100 crores. It is not in 1000 crores. It is in lakhs of crores.
Sir, nowadays,
This is the size of accumulated losses that these distribution companies have made. Kitna? 90,000 crore? है ना? This is the size of loss. Imagine. This is the loss that these distribution companies have made all these years. 90,000 crore rupees. Massive losses. Because of the inefficiency of the system. And because of that, electricity business was never an attractive business for private entities. Because it was inherently being deemed as a loss-making entity. And electricity supply was being deemed as a social service, 1 rupee, rather than being a business. But eventually the loss has to be paid for. The government was paying it through taxes, and the taxes were being secured from you. So eventually you were losing, and somebody else was making money. कोई चोरी कर रहा था. There were commercial, there were technical losses. Money was not coming into the industry. The industry was not growing. This was the situation till 1996. Odisha was the first state which even before privatized, they needed money because the infrastructure in power sector was too bad. They needed money to refurnish their system. So they went in for a World Bank loan. World Bank insisted that you bifurcate your business into transmission, distribution, and generation business. So 1996, they were the first state to separate out the generation, transmission, and distribution business. 1999, the Electricity Act came in, which allowed, they bifurcated beforehand. Thereafter, the Act came in, which said, yes, now you can separate out. After that, state by state, till 2010-11, every state bifurcated the generation, transmission, and distribution business. They started getting money so that they could operate each business as a profit head. Possibly some intelligent business mind was there, that you separate out the business of generation, transmission, and distribution, try to operate this business as profit-oriented businesses, such that you identify where the losses are happening and try to mitigate those losses happening in the system. In 2008, now the story comes up, how to make money. In 2008, the first electricity in 2003 we had the Electricity Act. 1999 1998 there was no 1999 was there was an act. 2003 they came up with another act which allowed for creation of power exchanges in the country. Thereby large entities could trade electricity in an exchange in the same way as you trade stocks in exchanges, in exactly in the same way as you trade commodities in commodity exchanges, you could trade electricity in electricity exchanges. The story started in 2008. The first two exchanges, Indian Power Exchange and the Indian Energy Exchange and in Power Exchange of India Limited, PXIL and IEX, they started functioning in 2008, which allowed companies like Torrent to go and buy power in bulk in the wholesale market. They would buy power in the bulk and sell it to the customers. Rather than generating, if you don't have any generating station, still you can buy power and still you can sell. And large power plants like JP and those other entities, they started building up their power plants and selling, rather than doing a long-term contract, they would sell it, we used to call them the merchant power plants, which would produce power and sell it to whomsoever wanted to buy electricity. आपने इंडस्ट्री लगाई, आपको बिजली की जरूरत है, आपको बिजली बेचेंगे, जिसको जरूरत है, they started selling electricity. They made money out of it.
इसमें IEX जैसे एजेंसी का क्या रोल है?
IEX is a exchange, energy exchange. Exchange, what is an exchange?
They will take based.
It is a trading platform. Like you have Bombay Stock Exchange. What is the role of Bombay Stock Exchange? It allows buyers, it allows sellers. They come into the same room, charges some commission, allows them to trade. Same is the role of energy exchange. It allows buyers into the room, whether it is virtual or physical, whichever way. It allows buyers into the room. It allows sellers into the room. Those who want to sell electricity, they can offer their electricity for a 50 megawatt, 5 रुपए unit, 70 megawatt, 4 रुपए unit, 100 megawatt, that is the rate. So different producers were allowed to sell electricity at the rate at which they wanted to sell. And different buyers would buy electricity in the exchange and the commission would charge, the exchange would charge some commission based upon the trade that was happening over that exchange. It was making money. Makes sense? How many minds are ignited? क्या पैसा बनाया जा सकता है?
बट ऐसे एनर्जी के ऐसे कितने ट्रेड्स होते होंगे जिससे वो एक्सचेंज को उतना प्रॉफिट मिले?
कितने ट्रेड होते होंगे मतलब?
कितने ट्रेड्स होते होंगे कि वो एम्पल प्रॉफिट जनरेट कर पाए?
It is a very complex market. One part. Second part, it is the most volatile commodity in the world. It is the most riskiest commodity in the world. The quantum of power that is traded is not in few kilowatts. It is obviously in megawatts. And even with a single unit price change, the money that you can make is immense. It is not a stock which you can store. It is a commodity that is perishable. If you are producing that commodity, if you are not selling it, it is waste. So the volatility of this commodity is so strong that it makes a very significant business sense to make money in this commodity if you are trading in this commodity, provided you understand the notions of this trade. It is not simple. When Torrent Power, let's say we take the example of Torrent Power, when Torrent Power is supplying power to you, it does n number of contracts to supply power to you today. Some of those contracts it has done 20 years ahead of time. 20 साल पहले उसने वो contract, long term contract कर लिए to supply you power. Let's say the demand of Daman is how much? 5 megawatt. और ज़्यादा है? ज़्यादा? 50 megawatt. Fine. Let's say the predicted demand of 2024 is 50 megawatt. So what do? Torrent, what would it do? It would buy power some 20 years back, some in 2003. It will do a contract estimating that this would be the power demand. They would do a contract for 30 megawatt. कि इतनी demand तो होगी. Fixed making payment. Fixed contract कि इतना 30 megawatt तो मैं खरीदूंगा ही खरीदूंगा. I am booking my demand for this, and they, as the delivery happens, they make a payment. Comes 2013, they revise their forecast. कि नहीं 30 नहीं 40 megawatt demand होगी. They do a relatively shorter term contract. 10 साल पहले वो they'll do another contract. Comes 2022, they see that okay, there are a lot of industries that have come up. Now you need more power to be supplied. So what do? They go to the market, again try to buy power. This is how they do it. Where do they get the power? All those who were long-term contract suppliers, they have already booked. So all those who are selling it in the market, they'll go to the market and buy it. Exchange is one of those platforms where you can buy electricity. Not you and me, but large players, they can go and buy electricity. So when it comes to 16th of January 2024, Torrent has done n number of contracts to supply power 50 megawatt today to Daman. It is not a single contract, n number of contracts. The number of contracts may be 20, 30, 40, 50. Some of the contracts done 20 years ahead, some of the contracts done 5 years ahead, some of the contracts done 1 year ahead, some of the contracts done 6 months ahead, 1 month ahead, 1 week ahead contracts. We have got 1 week ahead contracts. We have got 1 day ahead contracts. We have got 6 hours ahead contract. We have got real-time contracts as well. Because at any given point of time, nobody knows what the demand would be. Demand is uncontrollable. So for real-time also, you need to do a contract. The same way as those who understand what are futures, options, पढ़ा होगा? You would have heard the name at least, future options, forward market, future market. The same stuff works in electricity markets as well. Same stuff. The only interesting part is because of the non-perishable characteristics of this commodity, the prices, you cannot store it. The price, the commodity, whatever is being produced, if you do not sell it, it perishes. So there is always an urgency for the supplier कि जो बना लिया है उसको बेचें. Demand is not controllable. तो वो कितना बनाए कि वो बिक जाए? Nobody can easily predict. Very difficult to do that job. So to make some generation, if it is sold, it is his money. If it is not sold, he is lost. So in an effort to sell, he reduces the prices. So if you go into the market and try to buy electricity, in the night time, electricity is as available as cheap as 50 paisa per unit. Because those wind power plants, which typically operate during the night time, the cost of generation, the marginal cost of generation is zero. So when they are producing electricity, rather than not selling it, even if they are able to sell it at 50 paisa per unit, it is fine. At least they are making 50 paisa per unit. So these exchanges, we call them as wholesale markets, large wholesale markets. Possibly, if you can see the green tab on top, where generation companies, they sell electricity in the wholesale market to the distribution companies like Torrent over the transmission network. They supply power over that network, and then Torrent supplies it to you. You pay it to Torrent. Torrent pays it back to the people, to the generation company from where it has bought the electricity, and the grid also for uses of the network, because it is using the network, it pays the network for its uses. This is what exists as of now in this country, and this is what exists in almost 70-80 countries across the world in different forms. Every country has got its different form of market. We also have got wholesale markets in place where large buyers and suppliers can do the business, so that whatever demand fulfillment has to be done, that can be done through shorter term contracts.
Then what is the role of REC and PFC?
PFC is just a financing agency.
What about the REC?
REC, you mean rural electrification?
Yeah.
No, they are also just construction agents, more or less. Their aim is to provide money to the distribution companies to do rural electrification. Their role is limited. Their role is more on the network side, providing the network for the distribution companies, or providing funding for expanding that network. PFC primarily provides the funding. REC does a lot of electrification, rural electrification, especially in hilly areas. REC has done northeast area. They have done a lot of rural electrification jobs. Does that sound okay? Okay. So there is a way to make money in this business. There are systems that exist. Large players, since the risk involved is huge, people like you and me, they cannot participate because the risk, you need to have significant, and many big players have failed in this business also. Because if you don't understand this business, if you don't understand the volatility of electricity systems, you cannot do business in this. This is one segment that exists. However, now see the scenario. Which phone connection do you have? Airtel. BSNL. You've got Airtel, BSNL, Jio, Vodafone. Some 15 years ago, how many operators were there? How many operators were there? Some 11 operators were there. 11. Tata, Telenor, XYZ, there were so many different names. 15 years ago. If we go 20 years ago, there were hardly 2-3 players, but 15 years ago, somewhere in the era 2005 to 2010, till the consolidation of the telecom industry had not happened, there were a large number of players in the market. Everybody had a license, either a license or they were sub-licensees of the spectrum. Some of those entities, they did not have a license. So what did they do? They became sub-licensee. They got the spectrum purchased from some of the licensees, and they were providing the connection. Do you remember that story? Telenor. It didn't have a license, but still it was providing mobile SIM. Purchased the spectrum from other entities like Airtel and others, and it was it was providing you connection. At that point of time, if you see the growth and changes that have happened in the telecom industry, there was a time when BSNL का टावर छत पे लगवाना ही था. उस टाइम था ना? Airtel का टावर छत पे लगवाना था. There was a time. Now that is lost. Why?
Technology changes.
What?
Antenna size reduced.
One part. Second.
Space on satellite.
Huh? No.
Small area, more number of connections. So small systems. Density better.
Small antennas, fine. What apart from that in the antenna has changed?
Spectrum availability.
On that same antenna, now there is a transmitter of Airtel, Jio, BSNL, everybody's, it is on the same antenna. One tower, all antennas on that same tower. This is the, पहले Airtel का tower लगता था, BSNL का tower लगता था, BSNL का tower नहीं लगता. Why?
सबका एक ही tower.
सबका एक ही tower है. Who owns the tower business now?
Aggregator.
Who is that? You must know if you want to learn how businesses are run. Who runs the largest tower business, communication tower business in this country? No, it is not Airtel. No. No. It is Indus.
Indus Towers, yes.
Now the business has changed. I am telling this story so that you can appreciate what will change in the electricity sector in the next 10 years. You can imagine how things will change. Earlier, when Airtel was providing you a SIM, it would come, it would put up a tower, it would put up those transmitters, then only it would आपका network काम करेगा, है ना? When Jio came, it came along the railway lines or along the highways. We have now put up towers. Now you can get connections from us. It works. However, over a period of time, everybody started realizing that we are putting up towers. And the cost of putting up towers and antennas was significant. And the cost of calling was 17 rupees per unit, initial days. Now, you don't know. It is almost free. Not free, but the tariff plans have changed. There was a segregation of business. Earlier it was a vertically integrated business in which whosoever had the spectrum had the had those telecom towers and was the one who was providing you the service. Telenor was one which did not have the license, which did not have the spectrum. It purchased the spectrum, it did not have a tower. It used other system and provided you service. Without investing in anything, it provided you service, though the model did not work. And over a period of time, all companies started realizing that the quantum of investment required in putting up that tower is so huge that you cannot run a profitable business. So consolidation of the tower business happened. Towers went over to a certain specific company, and antennas were the only thing that were owned by the Airtel, Jio, BSNL, and Vodafone. This is now what has happened. So the network portion of this business has now been transferred to a different entity, and the part that touches you, that is the spectrum and the mobile services that are required, उस services के अंदर आपका mobile भी है, internet भी है, n number of SMS and all n number of services are there. They are being provided by 4 service providers. Tower is being operated by another service provider, but he doesn't touch you. You are getting connection from 4 different suppliers. And you can change your supplier at any point of time. Network काम नहीं कर रहा, you change your supplier. It works like this. And the spectrum that they have purchased, they purchased it some point of time in the history in several thousand crores. Now they are using that spectrum to provide you services. So spectrum is a sort of generation. Network is something similar to our transmission network, and the services that they are providing is something that electricity that we are providing to the consumers. Because of this happened in mobile communications in those days, because of the maturing of the technology in mobile communication and the fast change that happened in that technology vis-a-vis electricity. Electricity as a technology did not mature as fast as mobile communications or communications matured. So would it not be good if you have got a connection from torrent, let's say torrent doesn't give good power, बार-बार fail होता है, what would you do? Would you not prefer to have electricity connection from Tata Power? More reliable possibly. How to make that feasible? To make that feasible, you have to change the industry structure. You have to separate the generation company from the transmission company in the same way as they separated the tower business from the service part. So if you separate the generation business, separate the transmission business, separate the distribution business, and separate the metering business, consumer side interaction business, the metering and the revenue collection business, 4 verticals, if you separate them out, you can have multiple suppliers supplying you electricity in the same location. There could be a shop of Torrent, there could be a shop of Tata, there could be a shop of Adani, Jio, Reliance, whatever. They could put up shops. You could buy electricity from the supplier whom you want to buy. The supplier purchases electricity from the generator either through a long-term contract or in the exchange, transports it over the network, pays to the generation company for the electricity that he has purchased, pays to the transmission and the distribution company for the network uses, similar to Indus, and sells it to the customer. And the customer has a choice of not buying power from one supplier but buying power from multiple suppliers. So the day you feel ki no, this supplier is not providing you reliable power or this is giving you costlier power, let me change my supplier. In the same way as you are changing your mobile SIM, you could change your electricity supplier as well. Is this a too fancy idea? Difficult or impossible to implement? Possible. Challenges क्या है? Digital infrastructure is one issue, yes. Separating out the business is the first thing. Separate them out. Making them profit heads, ये generation company. This is what we have done. We have separated out the generation, transmission, distribution business. What we have not separated out is on the customer side. Whosoever is the distribution company, Torrent is the distribution company, they not only own the network, but they also supply you electricity. They own the network, they supply you electricity, possibly. So you don't have a choice as on date. But if you separate them out, separate out the owner of the network and separate out the supplier of the electricity, there could be multiple suppliers over the same network. It's the same way as you are using a transmission network. And therein the customers can buy power from n number of suppliers possible. That is the change that is required in the industry.
सर लेकिन इसमें जैसे टेलीकम्युनिकेशन में टावर मतलब टावर के ऊपर सभी वेंडर्स के एंटीनाज लगे, क्या ये इलेक्ट्रिसिटी ट्रांसमिशन में कॉमन लाइन पे मल्टीपल सप्लायर्स कैन सप्लाई द पावर?
आप बताइए,
कॉमन लाइन पे
बताइए कैसे संभव हो सकता
उसका भी एग्रीगेशन करना पड़ेगा.
How would it happen that if multiple suppliers want to supply power over the same network, how would the business run?
More power can be transmitted.
No. The question is different.
उसका एग्रीगेशन करना पड़ेगा एक सेंट्रलाइज जगह पे और फिर उसको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट.
The question is relevant, but the solution that is providing is not relevant. If anybody can provide the solution, I think you focus on the question. That is important. What is the question?
सेम चैनल पे
मल्टीपल
सप्लायर्स
कैसे सप्लाई करेंगे? बताइए कैसे सप्लाई करेंगे?
एट सेम
Suppliers will buy the units from the distribution transmission company,
ठीक है.
and whatever the unit
Are you able to understand his problem?
Yes, sir.
He is saying
Said how we will be delivering.
how he will deliver.
एक ही चैनल है,
एक ही वायर है, अलग अलग सप्लायर कैसे सप्लाई करेंगे ये बता दीजिए. वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग प्रॉब्लम. The basic is, if you understand basic physics, electricity doesn't have a color कि ये torrent की है, Reliance की है. All electricity is same. Same. There is no difference between the electricity. One. So the only solution is metering. You have got 4 power plants here, A, B, C, D, and you have got
4 टाइप ऑफ
suppliers there. You have done n number of contracts to supply the power, but actually who has supplied power at what point of time? You only need to do a metering at their ends so that you can assess who has exactly supplied what. Once he has supplied into the grid, it is immaterial whose electricity it is. Doesn't make any difference. There is no color to that electricity. Electrons are not company owned. Once you have injected power into it. The only thing that matters is how much power you have injected. So you meter the injection, meter the delivery, consumption, and you reconcile who has injected and who has utilized that electricity. The problem seems simple. It is not that simple. It is very complex. It is complex because there are a large number of contracts that you have done. It is not something कि A ने बेचा, B ने खरीदा. No. In the system, there are hundreds of contracts that have been done. There in the system, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of customers involved. Forget about the customers. Even if you talk about the distribution companies, there are hundreds of distribution companies in the country. And possibly there could be so many operators. How do you reconcile that? This is a difficult task. Those countries who have done it, countries like UK, those who have done it, there you can go and exchange your supplier. आपको बिजली पसंद नहीं आई, वेस्टर्न पावर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन से नहीं लेना, दूसरी कंपनी से लेना है, fine. Every 6 months you can change the supplier. It works. However, when you sit in for reconciliation, the reconciliation process is a very tedious process. When there are so many entities involved and so many type of contracts involved, the reconciliation process, at least in UK market, it takes 16 iterations. 16 बार हिसाब किताब मिलाना पड़ता है, तब जाके वो हिसाब किताब मिलता है. मतलब in a single shot of metering reading, you cannot reconcile the system. Not possible. 16 iterations, larger contracts, smaller contracts, real time and so many other things. And there is pre-settlement, there is post-settlement. You have done a contract, you understand कि हाँ उसने इतना supply किया होगा, कुछ payment पहले करना होगा, कुछ payment बाद में करना होगा. It is a complex process. Even that auditing is a complex process.
ये ठीक है आज के टाइम पे जितना
No, it is difficult. आज के टाइम पे भी, even today, they are doing 16 iterations to settle that. This is the level of complexity that it carries. It happens because कभी आपका meter fail हो गया, है ना? So many possibilities are there. Power line fail हो गई. So many possibilities are there. You, in a single shot, you cannot cover the whole spectrum of meter readings. Not possible. So you tend to, आप पहले higher level की readings reconcile करते हैं, then you go down to lower levels, customer end पे, it takes time. And then there are presumptions. आपने टाटा का कनेक्शन लिया, टाइम ऑफ डे यूज ले लिया, क्योंकि शाम को 5 से 6 यूज करूंगा तो इतना इतना ये रेट है. अंडरस्टैंड द कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी. आपने 5 से 6 में हायर टैरिफ पे करने का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कर रखा है, तो आपका ये भी रिकॉन्साइल करना पड़ेगा कि आपने पावर कंजम्पशन उस 15 मिनट में कितना किया या नहीं किया. इट इज नॉट अबाउट कि 2 महीने में आपने कितना पावर कंज्यूम किया. द प्रॉब्लम इज every 15 minutes how much power did you consume. And for the power plant it is even more complex. Though the number of power plants are less, the problem is complex because for the power plant you have to measure what every 5 minutes what you are producing. The iteration cycle is only 5 minutes, क्योंकि 5 मिनट में आपका पावर जनरेशन बहुत चेंज हो सकता है. So it has to be measured every 5 minutes or even smaller iterations as well. So it becomes a very tedious accounting problem. Very few people understand how to sort it out. Very few people. It is not easy to reconcile all these issues in a single go. The opportunity, once you separate out the generation, transmission, distribution business, is that as a consumer you can have multiple suppliers who would supply electricity at different rates, and you can buy electricity at different rates from different suppliers. Now those suppliers, they would not be owning the network. The network transmission network owned by some entity, distribution network owned by some entity, and the supplier, without investing into the network, he only buys power, transmits power, sells power. He is only a risk-taking entity. He is only a trader. There is no physical asset involved. The only physical asset involved is the meter. It will be owned by the supplier. अगर टाटा का कनेक्शन लेंगे तो मीटर टाटा का लगेगा and the service wire which comes from that line to your house. So that is the investment that that trader would do to supply you power. Rest of the investment is being done by the generation company, transmission company, distribution company. He does a n number of different contracts. He is smart. Now the reason why, how it changes is, when you have invested hugely into the industry, you do not have the capacity to take significant risks. आप खेल नहीं सकते. The risks you are able to take when your investment is low and possibly you are able to see the market fluctuations. Generation companies, typically they have invested a lot. Transmission and distribution companies, they have invested a lot. When a trader comes in, he has not invested into the business. He can play with the things. He can offer at a cheaper rate. सस्ता मिला, सस्ता बेच दिया. For a generation company, that doesn't work because he has already invested. He is all too into a different ball game in which he seems कि ठीक है, I have made an investment, let me try to recover as much as possible. So सस्ता बेचने का concept or that feeling कि ठीक है, I sell, that is not so strong in those businesses. But moment your investment into the business is low, possibly your risk-taking capability they become higher. And now even it is not a very small business. Even if you want to sell electricity to the consumers, you're buying few megawatts to supply 1,000 customers every day. You have to buy beforehand, get the revenue after. So even in that case, you have to invest significantly into the business to buy electricity. Megawatts costs. It is not something few hundred or thousand or crore rupees that runs into several thousand crore rupees. So buying electricity, selling it into the market, it is a big business. That business of supplying electricity in retail, we call it the retail markets, they don't exist in India, but yes, they exist in countries like UK, they exist in some Western European countries, in US markets they exist, wherein you can change your customers, suppliers, there are n number of suppliers available, and there are n number of suppliers available. In the UK market there are 10 plus suppliers available because now you don't have to invest into the network, you only have to buy and sell. So the number of people who can enter into the market, that increases. So that increases the competition in the market. And that decreases the cost that the consumer would have to pay. When there are 11 players in the market, obviously the tariff that you would be paying would be the most economical tariff possible. It can work, it works. This is how we call the retail markets, they can come into picture. So the lower green bottom strip that you see on the distribution side, possibly not very clear, but the retail markets which have been indicated, therein the retailers, they can buy power from the wholesale market and sell it to the consumers in retail. In a similar way as you have got mobile communication services being provided by shops near every nook and corner. This is what is working business model in some of the countries. This is what is being held up in the parliament for the last almost 14 years. The act has gone time and again in the parliament. It is not getting cleared. The moment it is cleared, there would be a number of retailers possible. So it is not something that technologically it is not possible. It is possible. It is only the willpower that has to be there to get these implemented. So the same set of changes that state electricity boards were bifurcated, similar set of business change or a massive business change would happen once retailers are allowed into the market. Then you, as a consumer, will have the power to buy power from anybody whom we want. Till now, any doubts? How to make money? Any questions? Any challenge that you see how these businesses would operate? The only thing that would be required is a significant level of metering and reconciliation of the supply and demand, what is happening in the system. And a new set of entities, retailers coming up in the market. That is a story that has been adopted. Now what is happening? Decentralization, digitization, decarbonization is happening. Now you are not using a petrol car, you are using an electric vehicle. You have got an electric vehicle, there is a battery there. You can store electricity. You have got a rooftop at your roof which you can generate electricity. And the grids are becoming smarter and smarter. These are the changes happening in the grid. With solar panels, the technology is such that you can have large solar farms, you can have smaller panels, you can have tiny solar PV cells embedded in your watch, in your mobile phones, everything, calculator, everything. So the technology is so amenable that you can use it in whatever size you want. And the economics, the cost of producing electricity remains the same. Whether you use it using a solar farm, let's say the cost comes out to be 2 rupees 30 paisa. If you are putting up a rooftop, possibly it comes out to be 3 rupees per unit. The marginal change in the cost is not so significant that deters you from putting up a solar rooftop. You put up a solar rooftop. And we enjoy that thing, कि सस्ती बिजली मिल रही है. For 20 years you are getting one-time investment, 20 years you are getting free electricity. This changing landscape in electricity sector creates opportunities for a new business model. Why it creates? These are the enabling changes that have happened. I'll focus upon this slide first. Despite, these are practical problems, despite that in countries like UK, they have made retailers, they have allowed retailers. And retailers can supply power. But, how many times did you change your mobile connection? Go back into the history. How many times did you, if you go back 10 years back, how many times did you change your mobile service provider? Many times. In the last 3 years, how many times did you change your mobile service provider? Not much. Why?
Less number of providers.
Is that the case?
Good economical network.
That because of competition, the quality of services being provided, and because of the regulator also, the quality of services being provided by different service providers has become more or less of equal quality. And even the tariff plans, they are more or less similar. Earlier, हमने जब बहुत बार मोबाइल सिम चेंज किया ना, that was a situation when the quality of service, the number of towers, there was a differentiation. कुछ areas में network आता था, कुछ में नहीं आता था. Now that problem is not there, more or less it is not there, except for one of the service providers. The tariff plans are similar. Earlier there were wide variety of tariff plans. नए शौक थे. रात को internet free. Those type of offerings were there. Now do we have those offerings? We don't have those offerings. Very interestingly, we don't have, those services are not being offered in the market, which existed 5-7 years ago. Now there has been a consolidation in the market in which the type of services being provided, the tariff being charged, and the quality of services being provided, they are more or less similar for all the suppliers. So you don't tend to change. The same has happened in the electricity sector. They allowed, in UK they allowed, ठीक आपको जिससे connection लेना लीजिए. But the transition rate was very low. Only about 5 to 6% of the consumers change their suppliers. Rest, there are many reasons for that. The variety of services that you want, आपको रात को बिजली free चाहिए क्या? Those type of services, they don't exist in electricity. जैसे आपको रात को internet free, that would be an attraction for some of us. है ना? चाहिए. So the reason is sorry, because of the technology itself. The technology, mobile communication is amenable to provide n number of services. है ना? With the same SIM, you can provide n number of services. You can call, you can SMS, you can provide internet, n number of services. But from an electricity connection, you only get electricity. The differentiation in services that can be provided to you as a consumer when you get electricity connection is low. आप अलग अलग सर्विसेज नहीं ले सकते बिजली के कनेक्शन के थ्रू, ले सकते हैं, लेकिन वो जो डिफरेंशिएशन है वो बहुत थोड़ा है, तो जो ट्रांजिशन है कस्टमर्स का वो भी थोड़ा रहेगा. डिफरेंशिएशन हो सकता है. किस तरीके का डिफरेंशिएशन क्रिएट किया जाता है? There are 4 service providers. One says I'll provide you electricity. The other says I'll provide you guaranteed 24% reliable electricity. So if I'm running a hospital, what would I prefer? ₹2 ज़्यादा लग जाए, पर कम से कम guaranteed electricity. Ventilator fail हो जाएगा, मरीज मर जाएगा. That is not a situation that is acceptable. So what do? They are ready to supply ₹2 extra to get that guaranteed electricity. So there is a differentiation in service in terms of the reliability of the service being provided. And people are ready to pay for that reliability. Then there can be services like I'll sell you green power. You are an eco-friendly person, you don't want to damage the environment, so you only want to buy green power. There are people who only want to buy green power. It sells. And there are large number of companies in Western Europe, those who sell only green power. And there are consumers who only buy green power. They charge, and there are a set of customers. So those companies which only sell green power, they also operate in the market. People get connection from those companies as well. So a differentiation of the product from the same commodity, how do you create n number of different products? जैसे हम दूध भी बेच लेते हैं, दही भी बना लेते हैं, पनीर भी बना लेते हैं. We create a number of products with the same commodity. In the same way with the mobile communication, we create a number of products, we can sell those. And there is a value to add every product. In a similar way, creating value for the product electricity is not easy. One. But if you can create a differentiation, if you can create different products from the same commodity electricity, yes, there is a value and people would be ready to buy it. You'll have to imagine what is the value that you can create. आप पनीर बनाएंगे या दही बेचेंगे या छाछ बेचेंगे या श्रीखंड बना के बेचेंगे, this is all up to you. That is where those retailers, if they have a proper business mind, they can sell differentiated products and make money from the same commodity electricity that they purchase. It depends what the requirement of the consumers are and how you are able to capture those requirements. At times the demand has to be created for a specific type of service. तो रात को इंटरनेट की आदत लगाना भी अपने आप में एक सर्विस है. जैसे जियो ने पहले कहा इंटरनेट फ्री, है ना, सारे दिन रात फ्री. So everybody got hooked to that That is creating demand for a commodity which didn't exist. That is also a way of doing business. So it all depends if this market opens up, how to create value for the commodity electricity. But typically, because the retail charges, they are fixed, so the transition in customers as of now in most of the markets that is limited. So it is not a very, consumer switching is very low. That restricts how retail markets across the world have behaved as of now over the last 10, 15 years, 20 years. This is how they have behaved, because the differentiation in electricity could not be produced. Now coming back to the economics of this, people like me, when they buy power from the state electricity board or the distribution companies, we are paying 8 rupees, 9 rupees per unit. So I put up a rooftop on my house. Now I pay a very low per month bill. But at times I only put up a rooftop of 3 kilowatts. My neighbor did not put it. Every time when I go and clean my rooftop, he stares at me. He's using cheap electricity. I'm not able to use it. What is the solution? Can I sell him? I have the money to put up another rooftop, another panel, 3 kilowatt की बजाय 2 kilowatt और लगा लेता हूँ. He doesn't have the money. I can sell electricity to him. That can be done. Is there a problem? Or do we have a solution? Can we sell electricity? No? Why were you able to sell retail by using you were able to sell retail. Why can't we sell electricity to my neighbor? When I am producing it, my neighbor needs it. Why can't I sell electricity to him? Who stops me? Laws are not there. Fine, we change the laws. नेटवर्क में से क्या बनाना पड़ेगा? What change is required? What change is required that if you have a rooftop, you want to sell electricity to your neighbor, what change is required?
You have to make laws.
Laws, ठीक है. Apart from laws, what do we need to do?
You have to establish transmission line from our panel
Why?
to that place.
Do you need to establish a new transmission line to supply electricity to your neighbor? Not required. What do you need?
Middleman,
Metering system to change.
Multi
We only need meters.
multi-part output.
We only need meters. One part.
अपने पैनल से उसके घर में जाएगा कैसे?
उसके पूछ के थोड़ी जाएगा वो. बिजली जो मेरे घर में आ रही है, वो मुझसे पूछ के थोड़ी आती है. Once I put up a solar rooftop, how does the electricity come into my house?
मेरे डिवाइसेस वो रूफटॉप के साथ कनेक्टेड.
No. मेरी डिवाइस रूफटॉप, मेरी डिवाइस तो ग्रिड से कनेक्शन ले रखा है, उनके साथ कनेक्टेड है.
मेरा रूफटॉप ग्रिड में छोड़.
मेरा रूफटॉप जहाँ पर मेरा मीटर लगा हुआ है वहां पर कनेक्टेड है.
तो उसका भी घर जोड़ना पड़ेगा उसको.
उसका घर तो जुड़ा हुआ है ना,
बाजू में
बाजू में है उसका घर. हिज हाउस इज कनेक्टेड विद द ग्रिड.
supply will go from, not from direct line, it will go through the grid here, sorry.
Once the electricity gets injected, does it carry my name कि मेरी बिजली है? No.
Just you do plus and minus only.
Plus and minus only. जब आप रिटेल खोल सकते हैं तो what is the problem in this? There is no problem. The only thing that you require is 3 things. 1, proper metering. Metering will inevitably happen once you put up a solar rooftop. आप किसने सोलर रूफटॉप लगाया?
No, sir.
है ना? कितने मीटर लगे हुए आपके घर में?
2 मीटर.
2 मीटर. एक आने का एक जाने का. Import export, it works. You put up a solar rooftop, you put up 2 meters, it works. 1, technology solution. Second, regulatory issue. Permissions have to be secured. Let's say we change the laws. Third, what is required?
What is required?
The person will come and make all the connections and, or give, provide the meter and.
Connection, the moment I put up a rooftop, the connection is done. So what do we need? We need somebody to do the settlement, to do the contract. Some mechanism by which I can sell power, मैं बिजली बेच बैठूं और पैसा नहीं दे, ऐसा तो नहीं होना चाहिए. Some mechanism by which if I am selling electricity, I get the money. Three things we require: one technology, one regulatory, and one is the financial solution, financial mechanism by which I can sell electricity. It makes sense because if I am buying electricity from the grid, I am paying as high as 12 rupees per unit. But if I am buying electricity from my rooftop, I am only paying 3 rupees per unit. And if I am willing to sell and my neighbor is willing to buy, why should he pay 15 rupees per unit for the electricity that I am ready to sell at 3 rupees per unit? Why? It makes sense for him to buy electricity from me rather than buying electricity from the grid. And if you are buying the same electricity from the grid is making money by buying from you and selling it to your neighbor at 15 rupees per unit. They are only making the money, you are. देखिए नुकसान की जिम्मेवारी हमारी नहीं है. We are running businesses now. All these businesses have to be run in a profitable way. Else if you do not run these businesses in a profitable way, you run into 90,000 crores of losses. To solve this, you need to have what we call as local electricity markets. It is not a simple perspective from an electrical engineering perspective. It carries perspective from communication people. For proper communication, it needs perspectives of markets. You need to develop a market. It needs perspective from legal entities. You need to have the proper law, regulation. All those things are required. So if instead of buying electricity through the grid, if I get an option of buying electricity from the grid and buying electricity from either my own rooftop or from my neighbor's rooftop. If let's say I am producing at 3, I am ready to sell electricity at 4 rupees, 5 rupees to my neighbor. I am producing at 3, I am selling at 5, I am making money, he is also happy. Rather than paying 15, he is only paying 5. Everybody is happy, except for the grid. So it makes sense for us to do business. It can significantly reduce your electricity bill without even making an investment into the grid. भरोसा नहीं है ना पड़ोसी के आज बादल आ गए पड़ोसी ने बिजली पैदा नहीं करी या आज आपका झगड़ा हो गया. It doesn't work. How do you solve this? So you have got you are getting electricity from both. वहाँ लिखा हुआ थोड़ी है कि वो जब वहाँ से पड़ोसी से बिजली आएगी तो ग्रिड से ले नहीं पाऊंगा. It is not written like that. It is not. You have got a connection. Whenever you have a demand, if the demand is getting fulfilled from your rooftop, that is deducted from the consumption. Presently, if you have a rooftop, that is how it is done. आपका जो बिल जो आता है वो उसका उतना कंजम्पशन काट के बाकी का बिल आपसे चार्ज कर लिया जाता है. आपने 200 यूनिट कंज्यूम करी, 100 यूनिट प्रोड्यूस करी, eventually you are paying only for 100 units. In the same way, if I consume 200 units and I am injecting 300 units into the grid, presently I am not getting paid for it. But if there is somebody to buy that electricity, I can be paid for it. So there is an incentive for me to put up a larger sized rooftop and sell electricity, provided there are mechanisms in the system to sell electricity. And I may not be able to fulfill your whole demand, but I can fulfill your partial demand. So whenever I got an excess energy available, I sell it to you. Whenever I don't have excess energy available, you buy it from the grid. Is there any issue in that? If I got cheap electricity available, allow me to sell electricity to my neighbor. He gets it at a cheaper rate. If he is able to fulfill the demand, fine. If he is not able to fulfill his demand, he can very well buy it from the grid and pay a higher price. So depending upon what the prices are, during the prices when I am ready to sell it at cheap, you buy it from me. During the prices when the grid is selling at the cheap, you buy it from the grid. If you are going in for 15 minutes metering. So during the daytime, if I got a sufficient solar and I'm selling it for 3 rupees per unit, you buy it from me. And during the evening hours when I don't have, possibly the grid is selling at 7 rupees, you buy it from the grid. Whichever is available and whichever is economical to you. So two type of prices you can face. One is the central price, that is the grid price, and second is the local price, that is your neighbor's electricity available. In the same way as you had got a fresh pani ka nal and a tank ki pani ka nal. You could use both depending upon जो fresh पानी आता है. अगर मेरी इच्छा fresh पानी से नहाने की, I can use that water. If not, मुझे नहाना ही है, I can use the tank water. So two type of networks or two type of supplies can be arranged to supply electricity to my household, and it works. It can work because you don't have to check कि किसकी बिजली आ रही है. बिजली is बिजली. Shall we break for?
Yes.
We'll come back on this after a very quick break. Or do you want me to continue?
No, it's a break.
Break le le. They have arranged a nice tea. So we come to a relatively new market concept, which we call as local electricity markets, local energy markets, in which we have an opportunity to buy and sell electricity to our neighbors, and as neighbors we can buy electricity from our neighbors who are producing in excess. The value or the opportunity in these markets is that the entry cost is low. You don't have to have buy bulk in megawatts. So we don't have to buy in megawatts. Our demand is in kilowatts. So to enter the market and participate in the market to buy and sell, the cost involved is significantly small. It is something like either I have to buy vegetables, 5 kilo of potatoes. I can buy it from the neighborhood shop. I can go to the large mandi, sabji mandi, and buy it there also. What are the differences? If I buy those potatoes from my neighborhood, I only have to walk to that place. It is near to me. I just have to go to the shop, carry a bag, buy potatoes and come back home, 5 kgs. But he has some different rate. Whereas if I go to the larger mandi, I have to travel some distance. Possibly there may be some entry ticket for that entering into the market, possibly. Even if I have to travel, we consider it as a part of the transaction cost. That when I'm doing a business, when I'm doing a transaction in my local shop, the transaction cost is low. because I only have to walk few meters and I can buy power, buy potatoes. Whereas if I am going to a larger mandi, I'll have to drive my car. There's a cost involved in going to that place. So because of the lower entry cost, that I can enter the market in a very easy way, the cost involved in participating in the market is low. Buying power from a local exchange or a local neighbor is easier vis-a-vis buying power from the wholesale market. And obviously, since I'm not a bulk user, buying power from the wholesale market is not reasonable. I'm not buying in megawatts. So all consumers like you and me can participate in that market. You can sell, I can sell, you can buy, everybody can buy and sell. So instead of being consumers, we become what we call as prosumers, producers plus consumers. We produce at times, we consume at times. So there's a new term in the economy that we call as prosumers. Those who produce at times, those who consume at times. Good thing is, because the entry cost is low, competing with larger players is easy. Otherwise, you cannot compete with the large players. They have got big money, they have got big contracts, you cannot compete with them. If you want to buy, and this electricity, if you allow, he is ready to sell at 3 rupees. Otherwise, to sell, produce at 3 rupees and sell it to consumers, if you want to establish a power plant, that the cost will be too high. It is only reasonable when you are allowing me to trade with my local neighbor, that he is ready to sell at 3 or 4 rupees. I am ready to buy at 3 or 4 rupees. Does it make sense? Else, I can get that rate only in the wholesale market, where participation is a costly affair. It helps to match in the local area and helps to mitigate the local uncertainties. आप सस्ता बेच रहे हैं, आप 3 रुपए में बेच रहे हैं, ग्रिड even if I am buying it from the grid, it will be costlier vis-a-vis which I am buying it at my neighbor. If I am buying it at a cheaper rate, there are many facets. One, even if the network fails, I'll get power. Reliability increases because the dependence on the network is low. It inevitably helps because for buying that power, I do not need any additional investment in the system. I need not pay to the grid for any network uses. I'm not using the network. I'm only using a very small portion from his house to my house. The quantum of network that I'm using is very minimal. So the charges that I should be expected to pay for utilizing the network should be very low. What are the market models that facilitate this thought? There are market models similar to the ones adopted for Uber, ones adopted for Ola, ones adopted for Airbnb. Same models. How does it work? How does Uber work? Those from computer science possibly they understand much better. How does Uber work? How do the algorithms of Uber work? कैसे काम करते हैं?
Nearest finding, maybe optimized finding to serve the number of cars.
What is Uber?
Taxi, cab service company.
It is a sort of an aggregator.
Yes,
No? It is a sort of an aggregator. It aggregates.
Service.
Customers, drivers.
Yes. It aggregates customers
Service provider.
and the cabs. It is an aggregate. It is only a platform provider. It is an aggregator which aggregates the services from the cab owners and the demand from the customers. Just an aggregator. When the demand increases, the rates, the algorithm is such that is start showing higher rates. When it starts showing higher rates to the customer, it also shows higher rates to the drivers as well. A larger number of drivers are incentivized to come into the market. I hope you understand that. है ना? जैसे प्राइस बढ़ेंगे, ज़्यादा प्राइस दिखेगी तो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा ड्राइवर मार्केट में सड़क पे आ जाएंगे कार ड्राइव करने के लिए. That helps to balance the demand and supply gap in the system. Very convenient. We are habitual of this. Our mindset has become habitual of that. How does it differ from Airbnb? Anybody has used Airbnb or Magic Bricks? How does it differentiate? How is it different from algorithm of Airbnb or Magic Bricks? Different from that of Uber?
सर एक मेजर डिफरेंस ये है कि उबर में आजकल जैसे है कि मैंने कैब बुक किया तो मैं डायरेक्ट ड्राइवर को पेमेंट कर देता हूँ. पहले मैं उबर का प्लेटफॉर्म यूज़ कर रहा था, मैं उबर का प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं यूज़ कर रहा. बट एयरबीएनबी में मुझे उसके के प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू ही जाना पड़ेगा क्योंकि कुछ प्रॉपर्टीज का एड्रेस लिस्टेड ही नहीं होता, उनकी बस फिक्स लिस्टेड रहती है. तो वही मेरा अगला क्वेश्चन था कि उबर ने जैसे आजकल उसका
No. We'll come over to that question. Question बताओ.
जो अभी बताने वाला हूँ कि उबर का अब अर्निंग एकदम से डाउनफॉल होगी. वैसे अगर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के केस में भी होने लगा तो मैं डायरेक्ट उसी को ही पेमेंट कर दूंगा.
How is the algorithm of Airbnb different from that of Uber? Airbnb, Magic Bricks. Magic Bricks? No.
I know, but I didn't use that.
और कौन सी sites हैं?
99
acres. How do those differentiate from the platform of Uber?
These sites are giving recommendations as per our requirement.
मुझे मकान किराए पे लेना है, कमरा किराए पे लेना है ना? I get a listing in, there is a difference. The prices, who decides the prices in Airbnb? The seller, no? There is a difference. When the algorithm, and how does matching happen?
As per users.
In Uber, the matching happens, you post a request, मुझे airport जाना है. There are suppliers, drivers available, those who agree to it nearby.
Nearest available.
Not me, those who are.
अमाउंट भी देखेंगे और कौन.
लेकिन ऐसी कैब बुकिंग सर्विसेज भी हैं सर जो जैसे
Yes, there are different algorithms. I agree, there are different algorithms available. Yes, we must understand how these algorithms work because based upon how these algorithms work, do the business develop. Uber has one type of platform. You know, let us compare it with Uber, which is most commonly we are using. In Uber, you post, I want to go from this place, you posted your requirement. The aggregator aggregated the taxi services and posted whosoever agreed, some driver has to agree. He has to agree looking at what is the price being offered, what is the tariff being offered. If he agrees, you accept it, I guess. You accept it. Yeah, I'm ready for pickup at this point. Uber does not decide the price, does it? It is decided based upon the algorithm that it uses. Algorithm that it uses, the driver does not decide the price. It is based upon the algorithm that they use. Let's say Uber is deciding based upon that algorithm. In the case of Airbnb or Magic Bricks, I want to hire 1 BHK. 1 BHK flat चाहिए मुझे. So what Airbnb will show me, I identify the area in which, so it will give me a listing. I identify कि मुझे 5,000 से 10,000 के बीच का चाहिए. It will provide me a listing. I have to choose. The prices are fixed by the supplier, not Airbnb. Property owner. Property owner offers the prices. I have to accept them or not. So that is a different algorithm. But both are algorithms to match local supply and demand.
Yes.
Both are two different type of algorithms to match the local supply and demand. या नहीं है ना? There is a local supply available. In case of Uber, local demand, it matches the local supply and demand. Same is the case of Airbnb or Magic Bricks. There is a local supply of flats. There is a local demand available. It provides a listing. The rates are decided by the supplier. Depending upon what my choices are as a consumer, I pick up which flat I would like to buy or possibly take it for rent. In Uber, we don't check कि मुझे ये taxi वाला चाहिए. No. Based upon who has accepted it, if we agree on that price, if we agree on that the price that is coming out from the algorithm, we agree to travel, we agree to use that service. These are purely, this work is purely in the domain of computer science people, not in the domain of electrical people. But the value for how technology can be utilized, how economics can be utilized for transforming the industry is possibly, you can see the value here. We call it the local electricity markets, we call it peer-to-peer electricity markets, in which there are a large number of peers available. At times you want to sell electricity, at times you want to sell electricity, at times I want to sell electricity. Whenever anybody wants to sell electricity, I offer it in the market. There are a number of buyers available. At times you could be seller, I could be buyer. So it is we all are peers in that market. Everybody either buying or selling electricity. And we need a market. We need a market platform. We need a market algorithm to settle this. This is one of the three facets that we discussed: technical, market, and regulatory. Provided technical connections are allowed, provided regulatory mechanisms are there. The third important thing to allow local electricity market to work is a proper market framework. The proper market framework is not provided by the state electricity board. They won't say you कि भाई साहब आप आपस में बिजली कैसे खरीदेंगे. They don't provide that platform. They are only charging you for the electricity that they are supplying. So if you want to sell your electricity, how do you sell it? You need to have, आप हर बार फोन करेंगे भाई साहब बिजली चाहिए क्या? No, can't do that. ना? बिजली बिकाऊ है. You don't put up an advertisement like that. So the only solution is that you have possibly a aggregator who runs a computer application, who runs a platform on which you can trade electricity, as we do it in exchanges. We possibly trade electricity between neighbors in a specific geographical area at prices which the supplier offers and the buyer is ready to buy. This sort of market platform is required to facilitate local energy trading. Algorithms need to be developed. Let's say they are developed in a similar way as we do for Uber or maybe Airbnb. Depending upon the characteristics of the network, you have to see कि किस तरह की network की characteristics है. Your algorithm has to be designed accordingly. I'm not going deep into it, but few facets. जैसे क्या है कि in Uber, the type of services, the heterogeneity of services is limited. आपको क्या चाहिए? आपको एयरपोर्ट जाना है? Nothing beyond that. आपके लिए कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि आपके पास जो heterogeneity of services वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 4 है. सलून चाहिए, हैचबैक चाहिए, सिडान चाहिए. This is the differentiation that is available in Uber. या ओला चाहिए तो आप ओला बाइक. There is a limited differentiation. आपको यहाँ से एयरपोर्ट जाने के लिए जो quality of services that are available, there is a limited differentiation available in those things, those services, and those are visible on the Uber platform. कि आप किस तरह की गाड़ी आप लेकर जाना चाहते हैं. In case of Airbnb, there are a wide variety of houses available. So applying such type of algorithm there may be difficult because the type of demand that exists is too heterogeneous. वहाँ पर 4 गाड़ियों से काम नहीं चल रहा है. आपको हो सकता है कि अटैच्ड बाथरूम चाहिए, हो सकता है आपको अटैच्ड किचन चाहिए, हो सकता है आपको पॉलिश्ड फर्श चाहिए. The variety of demand that can exist for a house is huge. So applying the same type of algorithm that we do for Uber may not work for houses. It doesn't work. So depending upon, the challenge is depending upon the type of demand that exists. भैया रात को बिजली चाहिए, शाम को चाहिए, 24 घंटे चाहिए. Depending upon the type of demand that exists, you have to develop a market platform which facilitates the type of generation available and the type of demand that exists. आप उसमें कितना differentiation create करना चाहते हैं, that would depend upon what exists in the market, what type of demand exists. अगर simple demand exists करती है, ठीक है, you only need to supply power, then the algorithm can be relatively simpler. But if there is a wider differentiation in services, possibly the algorithm becomes complex and you may have to use a much different algorithm similar to that of Airbnb, where rather than providing the rates, you provide a listing of services कि ठीक है, ये 10 घर हैं, ये 10 घर हैं, ये 20 घर हैं, आप किसकी बिजली खरीदेंगे? This could be one way, or the other way could be आपको अगले 3 घंटे के लिए बिजली चाहिए, जो कोई भी बेच रहा है आप उसकी खरीदेंगे क्या? There are two ways out. What you want? क्या आपको इसमें इंटरेस्ट है कि मैं किसकी बिजली खरीद रहा हूँ, या मुझे इंटरेस्ट है कि मुझे 3 घंटे बिजली चाहिए? My interest is मुझे 3 घंटे बिजली चाहिए. So depending upon what my requirement is, I would develop an algorithm for peer-to-peer trading in which I can trade electricity between myself and the other supplier who is supplying. Depending upon the characteristics of the system, depending upon the characteristics of the network, I would try to develop a marketplace. So in the case of Uber, the matching or the pricing that is being set by the platform operator. Uber का platform operator आपको price निकाल के देता है, यहाँ से 140 रुपए लगेंगे. Whereas in the case of Airbnb, the matching or the pricing is set by the individuals. He offers 5,000 रुपए किराया है, आपको जचता है तो आप लेते हैं, नहीं तो 6,000 जचता है, 3,000 जचता है, आपको जो जचेगा वो आप लेंगे. It is not decided by the platform operator. So there are differentiation between, on one side Airbnb is a very efficient searching algorithm. On the other side, Uber is a very optimal pairing mechanism. It is not a searching mechanism. It pairs in a very fast way between the customers and the suppliers. But both are primarily supplying the local demand using the local supplier. The pricing strategies, they could be different. For Airbnb, there could be customized prices, whereas for Uber, the prices are dynamic. They would depend upon what time you are using those services, which locality you are using those services. If there is congestion in the network, the prices may vary. So depending upon, this is an area of research over the last 7-8 years. Markets, it is not a very well matured, but for computer science people it is of value, because most of the theoretical background it is coming from computer science. Most of the theories they flow from computer science. Application in electricity sector are huge, because this is a sector in which every consumer is buying electricity. So if you are able to model such things, if you are able to develop such markets, and it is not some fanciful idea, we already have such pilot projects. I'll be touching upon those. So in local electricity markets, you allow, in any geographical area, you allow people to sell electricity, to buy electricity. They could be, very interestingly, it is not only that they would be only be rooftop owners, they could be independent RE power plants, they could be energy storage facilities. I have battery storage, I store and I supply when you need it. That is also possible. I could be a CHP plant, I could be a residential load, prosumer, having a rooftop. Whenever access is available, I sell it in the market. I could be an industrial load. So all those entities who produce power, who consume power, or who can store power, they can participate in the market. You can enter the market as a consumer. You can enter the market as a supplier if you are a RE generator. If you are a prosumer who has got a rooftop and a consumer, you can enter as a prosumer. If you have battery storage facility available, you can enter the market as a storage facility, providing energy, buying when it is available for cheap, selling it when there is a high demand, I can make money. So all type of such entities can enter the market, buy and sell electricity in the local market in a peer-to-peer trading format. Does that sound okay or difficult to digest? Specifically for computer science people. Okay, it works. You have studied peer-to-peer networks, I guess, at some point of time. For those from electrical, this is a very interesting knowledge. I would indicate that which is of value for the market, because the market as such was not evolving. Once you allow me to buy cheaper power, the value of such algorithms is huge. हम में से कितने लोग टैक्सी में बैठते हैं? आज से 5 साल पहले हम कितने लोग टैक्सी में बैठते थे? ऑटो में बैठते थे, ठीक है? अब हम सब टैक्सी उबर ओला कर लेते हैं. We are able to afford it, provide because they have gone cheaper. One of the reasons. If you create such markets, आज आपको लग सकता है कि नहीं बिजली खरीदना बेचना is it's not my job, but once you provide that facility and if it is available for cheap, why would not a large number of, when everybody has got electricity connection, why would not people prefer to buy cheap electricity rather than buying costlier electricity from the grid? So that fascinates the idea of creating local energy markets.
दूसरा और भी उसमें एक इम्पैक्ट हो सकता है कि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जनरेशन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में गवर्नमेंट की सब्सिडी काफ़ी ज़्यादा है जगह जगह. गवर्नमेंट उस सब्सिडी को विड्रॉ करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट उसको जब विड्रॉ
there are many such facets that when electricity is being supplied in Daman, it is being supplied at 2 rupees. 1.2. 1.6. Very cheap. ठीक है, चल रहा है. The day will come when the cost will increase. So if you talk from customers from Rajasthan, we would prefer, and obviously we would prefer, rather than paying 8 rupees per unit, why would I not buy it at 3 rupees per unit? Makes sense. So it will make sense for me earlier than for those who come from Daman. It will make sense for you at a certain point of time later, but it will make sense. Even the differentiation that you are paying 6 rupees and is available for 3 rupees, what is the harm in buying it at half the rate? And it is not only for household customers, it is applicable for all type of customers. I am not going into the intricacies of grid control and all that stuff. The broader framework I will be discussing. Because I understand it could be slightly trickier for those who are not well versed with the markets and electricity supply systems. So all type of players like storage, like prosumers, active consumers, microgrids, they can participate. The challenge is that when you are allowing so many people to trade in the market, you need to have some sort of traffic cop, a controller, a grid controller, or a system operator in place. Otherwise, if you allow कि भी ठीक है, यहाँ बहुत सारी फ्री में बिजली मिल रही है, सारे लोग टूट पड़ो, it will create congestion. So some sort of control mechanism, some sort of operating mechanism in which you balance the demand and supply and you ensure that whatever contracts are being done, they are feasible contracts, they don't become infeasible, and whatever you have contracted for, you are able to supply those things. All sort of such market mechanisms, market regulations have to be put in place before you allow people to trade electricity. So a system operator has to be brought in who balances the demand and supply in a specific geographical area. Let's say the case of Daman, what is the geographical area?
80 square kilometers.
80 square kilometers. It is a very ideal place where you can have a distribution system operator who balances the demand and supply in Daman itself. 1 lakh people, managing the demand and supply in the geographical area is a reasonable area in which you could have a market for Daman specifically, wherein all people living in Daman can buy and sell power between themselves. Everybody is connected to the network. You sell at 3, you buy at 3. Some charges have to be paid to the grid because you are using the grid to supply the power. That can be established by some algorithm, some pricing strategies. Having a quick understanding of these, need not bother about the text. In a traditional system, when we have the grid, everybody is either buying or selling it into the grid. As a household owner with a solar rooftop, I am either buying or injecting into the grid. If you have a local energy market and you allow such transactions, a residential customer can sell it to another residential customer having an electric vehicle, or a rooftop and electric vehicle, or a rooftop alone. Anybody can sell and buy from anybody else in the system. That is the opportunity that it creates for all players in the system. The role of different set of engineers comes here, because engineers and other players in these systems, you have to have a physical layer of network. One thing, obviously you need to have an interconnection. You need to have a communication layer so that whatever I'm injecting, you know some communication mechanism by which information flows. You need to have a virtual layer which reflects the prices. Prices have to be visible. जैसे आपके Uber, Ola के prices are visible, so those prices have to be visible over the platform. So a layer of information about what is the demand available, what is the supply available, and what would be the consecutive prices that would be at which the electricity is available, they have to be reflected in this through this virtual layer. You and me, we are the participants, and using these multiple layers of physical connection, physical electrical connection, communication network, market platform, and having a visibility of the prices is required to enable this market. So in essence, it not only requires electrical engineers, it requires computer engineers to understand this and develop algorithms. It requires appropriate economists to understand what the market behavior is, designing algorithms, when they allow, when they not to allow electricity to be sold. Regulators in place so that contracts are not plotted. Essentially, this would lead to a broader framework in which you have a generation company, you have a system operator at the transmission system level, a distribution network operator, possibly let's say at the level of the union territory. You have got distributed generation, you have got large consumers like industries and small consumers like you and me participating in a local market and a local grid operator in place. So you require more number of entities in the system to enable these markets to work. This is how the power would flow. Power can flow from the generation company to the consumers. It can flow from the distributed generation like rooftop to the consumers. It can flow from the grid to the large consumers. This is how power flows. This is how money flows, in which is the time over? We still have some 15 minutes more. This is how the money flows. When I am buying power, I am paying it to the grid operator. He could possibly be paying it to the supplier. Supplier could be paying it to the generation company. Large consumers will be paying for the electricity being supplied by the distributed generator, or they may be paying it to the supplier who is buying from the generation company. So there is a whole complex web of money transaction that has to be followed. You have to track where the money, who is supplying what, and who is to be paid for what type of services he is providing. Data flow, again, it is an interesting problem in all this, because when you are, there are a lot of electrical transactions and money is flowing, you have to take care of what data has to be, not all data has to be shared. मैं कितना produce कर रहा हूँ, you should not be bothered. You should only be bothered about what is the availability of electricity that I am allowing in the system. So what type of data I can share, what information should be made public, what information should be kept private, all those facets have to be developed. Security of information has to be maintained. The role of computer science people, security, cyber security issues, they have to be ensured. So whole lot of data flow, कि किसने कितना produce किया, किसने कितना consume किया, किस time पे consume किया, all that information has to be reconciled to enable such markets to evolve. Why I am touching upon in depth is, all this thing you are experiencing day in and day out when you are booking Uber. It is the same thing that can be applied for electrical systems as well. But when we book an Uber car, we don't think, we just think, tick, tuck, 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 that is it. We don't try to see how this business is running and what all layers exist, what all engineering goes into developing this business. The interesting thing would be that if you can understand how these businesses were developed, and you can apply such knowledge to develop new businesses for markets which are evolving, which will come up in the future, that would bring value to what understanding you have about computer science or electrical engineering. There could be a large number of transactions like you and me transacting together, two people in the same locality, one way. These all of them club together and trade with this locality, another way. Or this whole of this room joins together as a group and trades with another entity sitting in another room. We can do it, trade that way. Or this whole of this building joins together and trades with another building. So there are n number of algorithms possible. You can trade as an individual, you can trade as a small locality, you can trade as a larger locality, or you could trade as a much larger locality, as a city also. So the type of algorithms that can be developed are really interesting. You can have peer-to-peer trading between different entities. You, me, my Padosi, your Padosi, 4 people, it works. Or we join together as a group, you join together as a group, we trade in groups. Or we make larger groups and we trade in the grid. That is also possible. We form a very big group, we trade in the grid. So all type of algorithms are possible and all type of trades are possible. That increases the versatility and the heterogeneity of the possibilities that exist. जैसे आपने ऊपर में देखा 4 options हैं. Here there can be n number of options. मैंने बिजली बेचनी चाहिए, मैंने बिजली आपको बेची, या मैंने as a group इनको बेची, or as a class we sell it to another class. So there are so many opportunities available that when everybody in this class is producing, you can sell it to the other class, those who are possibly not producing. That heterogeneity creates wider opportunities for making money. So possibly those from computer science can appreciate the wide variety of algorithms that need to be developed for peer-to-peer markets. Various type of trading structures. You can have how the information would be processed. There could be a central server in one locality who processes all that information and passes it on to the another server in another locality. That can be one way out. Or this is here. You have in a certain batch, there is one local server who processes all the information. In this, everybody knows everybody else's information. सबको सबका कौन कितना, everybody knows कि कौन कितना generate कर रहा है, कौन कितना consume कर रहा है. Even that is possible, but that makes it slightly more complex. You could have an interaction between these servers combined together. So Either it could be community-based or it could be peer-to-peer or hybrid. A wide variety of algorithms can be developed to process that information as to who, and here in such domains does issues like blockchain, they come into picture, where you trade between different partners, but that information is not lost to other people who are not trading with you. And there are companies who are making money in this business, specifically in this business. Search for Power Ledger. It is a company from Australia. It makes huge money out of this business. They have their algorithm, people trade, and they make money. So if you want to understand the value of such businesses, there are examples already available in the system. Just at any point of time, you search for Power Ledger Australia, and they are a very interesting set of company which does this business using such algorithms. There are barriers, obviously there are technical barriers, there are regulatory barriers, commercial barriers, social barriers ki bijli kaun bechega. There are challenges in running these systems. But the benefit is that once the retail markets are established, you can buy and sell electricity at the most optimal rate, which otherwise buying it from a grid or from any supplier would be slightly costlier. So it offers, and provided that we have the technology available, provided we have the regulatory approvals there, the platforms available, it would not be too difficult for us to develop such algorithms and adopt them. I have not gone quite deep into it, but there are several pilot projects that have been run in India, one in Delhi, one in UP, and Power Ledger has been doing it in a big way in Australia and in other countries as well, and several such pilot projects in US, European markets, they have happened. Though the acceptability of this has not increased as yet, the reason being the percentage of budget that we are consuming on electricity is very small vis-a-vis your overall monthly budget. The moment your energy cost increase, you are likely to adopt mechanisms which will save you the cost of buying electricity. So any questions, doubts? Or it is fine? If it is fine, that means either you haven't understood it or it was too easy to understand.
First,
Haven't understood it. First one what?
understood.
You understood it? If you have understood it, possibly there would be some doubts.
वो जिस टाइम पे थे उसी टाइम पूछ लिए.
So this is how the industry structure is likely to change. This may seem slightly too far-fetching, but even 10 years ago we were not expecting that we will be able to get hold of taxis the way which we get it today. So the moment the technology matures, the moment the idea catches, adoption may not take too much of time. It will become very easy. So how many of us go to the shop and pay our electricity bills? Nowadays everybody pays it through mobile. So most of the financial services, they are available on digital payment systems. So if there is anything that helps you, adoption of that technology would not take time. Provided the right set of regulatory setups are there, the markets are allowed to operate, the technology for metering of those systems is available. These things, as we stand today, we are in 2024. By 2025 end, when smart meters would be there, these experiments or thoughts, some of those are likely to be adopted by that time, if not all. So there is a possibility that these things will catch value over a period of time. So possibly people will be happy to buy power from Daman. someday if they are ready to sell at 2 rupees. Any further questions or else I wind up this session?
सर
हाँ,
जो रूफ टॉप जनरेटिंग सिस्टम है उसमें सर हमने जितना जनरेट किया उसको कंज्यूम करने के बाद जो एक्स्ट्रा बच रहा है उसको हम ग्रिड में दे रहे हैं। तो सर जब सीजनल चेंज होगा, जैसे रेनी सीजन आ गया, तो उस समय सर बहुत सारे एरियाज़ हैं जहाँ पे ज़्यादा बारिश होती है और बहुत सारे ऐसे एरियाज़ हैं जहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा ठंड पड़ती है, तो उस समय सन का वो इंटेंसिटी बहुत कम हो जाता है, तो उस समय सर फिर उससे हमें वापस ग्रिड पे ही डिपेंड होना पड़ेगा।
yes. Eventually, this is a challenge that these solar systems, they do not provide reliability. They do not. So ऐसा नहीं कि हमने कोई ग्रिड का कनेक्शन हमने काट दिया हो, हमने कनेक्शन नहीं काटा है, हमने सिर्फ एक ऑल्टरनेट सोर्स ऑफ सप्लाई एस्टेब्लिश किया। बाय डायरेक्शन या यूं कह लो कि दो सोर्सेज पे हमारी डिपेंडेंसी है। एक जो यू मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हेन यू आर गेटिंग एन इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कनेक्शन, आपको क्या मिलता है?
एक्चुअली सर
जब आप बिजली का कनेक्शन लेते हैं तो आपको क्या मिलता है? जब आप बिजली का कनेक्शन लेते हैं तो आपको बिजली मिलती है, एक चीज, ठीक है। आपको नेटवर्क मिलता है, नेटवर्क नहीं होगा तो बिजली कैसे मिलेगी, ठीक है। जिस दिन आप बिजली का कनेक्शन लेने जाएंगे आपको नेटवर्क मिलेगा। दिस इज वन सर्विस। बिजली मिलना इज सेकंड सर्विस, ठीक है। थोड़ा सा अगर आप ध्यान से देखेंगे तो रिलायबिलिटी ऑफ सर्विस, रिलायबिलिटी ऑफ सप्लाई इज ऑल्सो अ सर्विस। तुम्हें बिजली मिल रही है, कभी मिल रही है कभी नहीं मिल रही है, वो बिजली एक बिजली है और दूसरी जो 24 घंटे मिल रही है, तो आप उसकी रिलायबिलिटी ऑफ सर्विस इज ऑल्सो अ सर्विस। तुमने कार चलाई, कार रास्ते में ब्रेक डाउन हो गई, you have insured, you have done insurance or you have contracted some कि भाई जब भी कार टूट फूट जाए, सड़क पे पंचर हो जाए, वो आके ठीक कर देना भाई। So that is a reliability. For that service, for reliability, you are paying. So in the same way, for when you are paying into the grid, वो जो आप 8 रुपए दे रहे हैं, वो सिर्फ बिजली के नहीं दे रहे हैं, आपने उस वायर के दिए जो आपके घर तक आया, आपने उस बिजली के दिए जो आपने कंज्यूम करी, आपने उस रिलायबिलिटी के दिए जो आपको उस बिजली से मिल रही है। तो जब आप सोलर से खरीदेंगे ऑब्वियसली आपको वो रिलायबिलिटी नहीं मिलेगी, इसलिए वो थोड़ी सस्ती मिल रही है। एक फैक्टर ये भी है। अगर आप उसको रिलायबल बनाना चाहते हैं तो आप सोलर के साथ बैटरी लगाइए, कॉस्ट बढ़ जाएगी, इट विल बिकम रिलायबल, बट देन द कॉस्ट इंक्रीजेस। सो इट डिपेंड्स व्हाट यू वांट टू डू। पैसा है जेब में, आप बैटरी लगाइए, मेक इट रिलायबल। नो, यू अडॉप्ट टू सोर्सेज की जब सस्ता मिल रहा है तो मैं ग्रिड से उठाऊंगा, सस्ता मिल रहा है मैं सोलर से उठाऊंगा, जब नहीं मिलेगा तो मैं ग्रिड से लूंगा। सो यू आर पेइंग टू द ग्रिड फॉर द नेटवर्क and you are paying to the grid for the reliability of services that are being provided. For rest of the electricity generation, I am paying it to the solar generator. Solar. You have to see कि जब मैं कनेक्शन लेता हूँ तो मुझे क्या क्या सर्विसेज मिलती हैं। जब मैं उबर बुक करता हूँ मुझे क्या सर्विस मिलती है? What is the service that I get? जब मैं उबर बुक करता हूं तो मुझे एक टैक्सी मिलती है, मुझे एक ड्राइवर भी मिलता है, टैक्सी नहीं ड्राइवर भी मिलता है ना। एंड दैट बिजनेस हैज गॉट मल्टीपल मॉडल्स अवेलेबल। वो ड्राइवर अलग हो सकता है, टैक्सी का मालिक हो सकता है, टैक्सी उबर की हो सकती है, टैक्सी उस ड्राइवर की हो सकती है। So there are various business models that exist. So when I am booking a Uber, I am getting multiple services from the same contract. I have to see what all services I am getting from that contract. And I can develop a different contract for every different service that I use. That also I can do. That thing, that business mind, possibly people in this hall are more knowledgeable than me, that when you are doing any business, what type of services you are getting, है ना। आप जब खाना ऑर्डर करते हैं, आप रेस्टोरेंट में जाके भी खा सकते हैं, आप पिकअप भी कर सकते हैं, आप डिलीवरी घर पे भी करवा सकते हैं. These are 3. खाना ही खाना है. All these 3 ways are there to fill your stomach. But there are 3 different services available. Food is one. When you do a Zomato, delivery is another. So you have to see in every business what all services are bundled in that which you are acquiring. And you can differentiate those services and create a new business out of every different service. It works. Like Pizza Hut. They bundle the service. जब आप पिज़्ज़ा बुक करते हैं पिज़्ज़ा हट से ही ना, डोमिनोज से, वो जबरदस्ती, ही इज द ओनली वन हु प्रोवाइड्स यू, है ना. डोमिनो का आई थिंक डोमिनो और पिज़्ज़ा हट नहीं नेसेसरली दे प्रोवाइड थ्रू देयर ओन डिलीवरी बॉय. डोमिनोज delivery man is of the same. So if the delivery man is of the same entity, so is making the pizza, delivering it also. You can do it through Zomato also. The making is done by somebody else. This is being done, delivery is being done by somebody else. In a similar way, you can differentiate the services that are being provided to you. Generation is being done by somebody else. Network is being provided by somebody else. Retail is being done by somebody else. You can charge it based upon, you can develop apps, you can develop mechanisms by which you pay for each service separately. Those type of differentiation in the business has to be done. In fact, I think I could have touched upon those differentiation for this class. That would have been more beneficial. But yes, these type of differentiation are available. If you have any doubts, you can refer to whatever I have taught here. More or less, this is the domain of research that I carry. At any point of time, you drop an email or you search for any of my papers, you'll find my publications in these domains. So it could be of value if anybody is interested in it.
Thank you so much, sir. We really enjoyed your session too much. Being an IT guy, अगर मुझे इतना कुछ टर्म समझ में आ रहा है, कुछ क्वेश्चंस थे, मेरे कुछ आंसर्स थे, अगर मुझे समझ में आ रहा है तो I can really imagine कि इलेक्ट्रिकल वालों को कितना बेनिफिट हुआ होगा. Since I know you hate the formalities, so I won't take too much time. And now request Dr. Ashish Maheshwari, FDP coordinator, and Dr. Nirparaj Rai, FDP co-coordinator, to present a memento. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
लाइट चालू कर देना.
Lights off कर दो, project off कर दो.
Lights off कर लेंगे.
प्रोजेक्टर